Hi everybody, it's Sarah Cray with Let's Make Art, and we watercolor a new project every single week. And this week we are doing our fall pumpkin. Colorful designs. It's just a great fun project. We have an outline here. If you have the subscription box or purchase the kit, the outline is included. If you do not, you can find this outline on our website, letsmakeart.com. Just find the pumpkin project, click on the button that says download outline, then print said outlined. Okay?
3 easy steps.
I
didn't count what you said, but it's
it feels like 3.
Somewhere around 3.
Well, that's perfect because we're actually doing 3 steps to do this project.
How convenient.
I know. So the very first step is we are going to paint the sections. Our second step is we are going to do the stem. And our third step is the white designs with our bleed proof white, which is the bonus item in our November box. Woo-hoo. So fun, new things. We are using 4 colors for this project. So our colors are black. Probably shouldn't have started with black, that's okay.
It's okay, I got you 2 cups of water.
Perfect. And we have space blue. And we have red rose. And we have tangerine. And we also have our bleed proof white, which I am not going to, well, maybe I will. I'm going to clean it off. Probably won't show up on the paper, but should I do it there? Probably not there. Here, white.
You already did it.
You're like, it's already there, Sarah. Okay. Also, I would like to say that the bleed proof white is a thicker consistency than liquid watercolor. So yes, it will be chunky, kind of like acrylic paint a little bit. So I add a little bit of water to mine to then make it easy to use on a paintbrush.
Also, a good candy bar is usually chunky, so that's just good things.
Just all of the best things are chunky. Wait, do you like chunky peanut butter?
No.
Me neither.
I like
Smooth
creamy
is way,
Yep.
way better, so the statement I just said was false.
Yeah, that's true.
You can also scoop a little bit out of the bleed proof white and put it on your palette. So either way, you can work directly out of the jar or not. It's up to you. It's your life. Okay. So, for your outline, I already started that outline because I forgot that I do the outlines in the tutorials, but that's okay, we can keep going. I tape the outline down to my watercolor paper, and then I take graphite paper, which can be found in your Let's Make Art Matter postcard, folded up. It's there. And I'm so sorry. We did have it packaged separately in the beginning, and then we realized, what a waste of a cellophane bag. We're trying to be more efficient.
Yes.
So we put it in the other small cellophane bag. I understand that that is not intuitive.
Well.
But just so you know, I do write it in the welcome card. When you open your box, there's a welcome card. You open that up, it says, graphite paper can be found in your Let's Make Art Matter postcard. Fold it up. And then you're gonna take it. There's a shiny, usually darker side. You're gonna do shiny side down. Okay, and then whatever mark you make on your paper, it's going to transfer to your watercolor paper. You want to adjust your pressure. So if I press really hard, it's going to be a really dark line. Now watercolor is transparent, so if you do a really dark outline, you will see that through your painting. So try an outline as light as possible to get the lightest point. If you have a felt pen, that is better to use than a pencil or a ballpoint pen because it has a softer tip. I'm going to do my outline darker than I would usually do so you guys could see what I'm actually painting. So yeah, that's, can they see that pretty good on the overhead?
Yeah.
Okay. But again, try and get yours as light as possible. Okay. Outline, done. Now we're going to do our oath. So Keenan, raise your right hand, and all of you at home, I hope you do this instead of just watch me do it because that would be awkward. And repeat after me. I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise not to compare my work.
I promise not to compare my work.
And I promise to have fun.
And I promise to have fun.
I always want to do this right after you say it. That way I just want to go, yeah.
That makes me think of the Pep Boys commercial. I don't know why, but just a...
And I promise to have fun. I've wanted to do that every single time you've said that. This is the first time I think I've done it, though.
Well, I'm glad you did.
We've been doing this a long time.
Should be a t-shirt.
Okay. We are using 2 paintbrushes, around 6 and around 2. Now we are covering a lot of area with this pumpkin, so if you have a larger brush, what is this guy? This one's big. This is a 16.
That's called the Big Chungus.
You can use bigger brushes if you have them. But I did this with around 6 and around 2, and that's what I'm using today. But just know that you are absolutely free to use different brushes. You don't have to use exactly what I'm using. There are many ways to paint a picture.
Will the different brushes give you different textures?
Depending on the brushes, yes. So like, you wouldn't want to paint the pumpkin with this guy, because this is specifically for like textures on like trees and bushes and things like that. This is a stroke. Yep. And this one could work well. Usually strokes and flats or washes are good for even washes and covering large amounts of space quicker. So when I'm doing landscapes, these are great. They would work too for the pumpkin.
For speedy work then?
Yeah. So just if you're doing larger paintings or larger areas of the same thing, bigger paintbrushes are just better to use because it just saves you time.
Yeah. Nice.
Okay, for our warm-up that we have here, we'll practice 2 things. One of them is just our values, because how we're going to kind of shape our pumpkin and give our pumpkin dimension is by having different values. And you can see here that pumpkins have those ridges, and whenever those ridges come in, they're going to be a darker value, and that's because they're going away from you and away from our light source. So that's why like the front top of pumpkins, like the parts that jut out are a lighter value. The parts that cut in from the ridges are a darker value. And that is how in art you communicate 3-dimensional objects. If we were to do this in even value across the entire thing, that pumpkin would appear smooth and not have any ridges, which would be good if you were painting not a pumpkin. You know what I'm saying?
Not a pumpkin.
Yeah, but since pumpkins do have ridges, same that cactuses have ridges, it's similar to our cactus project that we've done. You want to make sure you communicate. You want to communicate the ridges in your pumpkin. So what I like to do for that is I like to get a darker value. And to get a darker value, all that means is I'm going to have more paint than water. So I'm going to load my paintbrush with paint. Here's my dark value. Every time I pick up water, the value is going to get lighter. And this is a common misconception with watercolor, is you think that the water is only there to rinse your brush. That is not true. You view water as if it's part of a paint color itself. So whenever you want to get a lighter color or a lighter value, you're going to pick up water. Make sure you have a paper towel handy, because the thing with that, after I say that, is then people tend to pick up a lot of water, and you don't want to be dripping. So you either hit your brush off the side of your cup or touch your paper towel a few times to get rid of the excess water. Okay? So and you can layer. So here's my value from dark to light. And let's say that I put it down and I'm like, man, that's not as dark as I want it to be. I want it to be a little bit darker. There's nothing wrong with doing another layer on top. This is called wet on wet. This one's a little bit more controlled, because you can do wet on wet where you just kind of like drop in textures, but we're not doing that on this project. but I'm just showing you that you can layer. And even when this dries, if you need to do another layer on top, you absolutely can. The next thing that we are going to practice is just using our round 2 and getting thin detail lines, because when we do our last step, which is the designs on the pumpkin, we're going to be doing light brush strokes to get thin marks. So I just want you guys to practice grabbing your round 2. Now, what I like to do, because even though this is a small brush and it has a small brush tip, if you load it with too much water and too much paint, it's going to be filled, which means it's thick. So even if I'm trying to press lightly, I'm going to get a thicker line. So what I like to do is I like to grab a little bit of paint and then I smush my bristles back and forth so it kind of squishes them into a point, and then I do my thin lines. So look how much thinner that line is compared to the top one. So just because it's a smaller paintbrush top doesn't mean you're actually going to get a super thin line if you have too much water and paint built up in your belly of the brush. So if you want to practice a few designs before you get into the project, that's a great step to do while the orange part is drying. So you don't have to do it before, you can do it while you're waiting, because you want to make sure that your orange pumpkin is completely dry before you do the white details on it, because we want them to stay sharp. So kind of just practice. You'll also notice that I did not include the design pattern on the outline, and that's because I want you to make it yours. So if you want to look at the reference and do what I did, sure, no problem. I have no problem with that. But I wanted to make sure that you guys knew that you have the freedom to paint whatever you want on your pumpkin. Maybe you don't like the white leaves. Maybe you want to letter something. Maybe you want to do a scene with white instead. You can do whatever you want. I just wanted to give you that freedom. Okay, I think we're ready to get started. So I'm going to be painting one section at a time. I'm going to start with my middle section here. And I'm actually going to do a new thing of orange because mine mixed in with my red. Now I put red in this palette as well because in the parts where I want it to be a slightly darker value, instead of adding black, which would turn my pumpkin brown, I wanted it to be a little bit more vibrant. So you can add other colors besides black to darken the value, but then doesn't gray it out. So that's why I added red. Okay. Get my round 6. Get it wet, hit it off the side of the cup, grab my tangerine, and I'm just going to start filling this in. Now, what I usually like to do is I like to grab paint, put it down, and then just use water to spread out this color that I'm putting down.
I'm just accidentally making a lot of noise, and I apologize.
Okay, now, so I have my initial wash down. It's okay if it's not perfectly even. And now I kind of want to layer it to get a little bit more depth. So especially when we're getting close to the sides here and the bottom is where I'm going to get a little bit darker value because the pumpkin is turning away from us. So kind of here you can put in a darker orange, this bottom, and I'm just doing it right on top of what I just laid down. Now, after you do that, you see how there's kind of a strong outline from where I just did that second layer? You can just take a damp brush, so I rinsed the color off of it and dried it, and I'm just blending out those lines. If you want to keep those lines, on some of them we do have harder shadows where that line is going to, that edge is going to stay there. But for the most part, we want to blend it out and have it be a smooth transition. So I'm just using my damp brush to work the areas back and forth to even it out. And then now is where I want to introduce a little bit of red.
My watermelon would look so flat had you not said that. Just be a clear wash across the whole thing.
Your watermelon would have?
Yeah.
Well, that's okay because watermelons are smooth.
I thought caffeine was supposed to help focus.
Keenan just downed an energy drink.
Crushed it.
First of all, energy drinks are very bad for you. Please don't drink them. Second of all, Keenan.
I thought it was supposed to help you focus.
No, it just makes you like.
It's an orange. It's an orange watermelon.
This is what energy drinks do to somebody. I feel like. Like that's all they do.
I haven't been able to stop talking, but.
Okay, now as you see, we're doing different layers and blending out at different times. So we're gonna get blooms, and I'm okay with blooms. Blooms are when you get these edges, and blooms just happen when you apply water or paint and it dries at different times. And it's usually when you're doing layers. And Canson actually tends to bloom easier than other watercolor paper. I don't see this as a bad thing because personally I think blooms just bring personality and texture and visual interest, so it never bothered me, and that's actually why I prefer Canson paper. For some artists, it really bothers them. So what I would say is just be aware of your layers or try using a different paper, and usually the other papers will naturally even out your washes so you won't get those hard edges. Now, if you get blooms that are super intense, that are distracting to the whole thing, you can try and just with a damp brush blend out those hard lines.
It is from Talladega Nights.
Is it?
It's his son Chip, or his son something.
That's really great.
And Google has the audacity to correct my typing.
Oh yeah?
Because I misspelled I'm.
You misspelled what?
I'm.
Like no apostrophe?
Yes.
I never put apostrophes in. That's why if you look at our logo, Let's Make Art, there is no apostrophe in the let's.
Oh, yes.
Because I designed that logo.
Apostrophe.
And I don't pay attention to grammar.
They're like a myth anyway.
And then we hired other people and they're like, you need an apostrophe in your name.
The way you phrase that, we hired anybody else.
Literally any other person in the company was just like, why did you do it this way? And I'm like, I'm sorry.
I don't know.
I don't know why I am the way that I am. I know there should be an apostrophe there. I just don't care about it.
It's just an apostrophe.
It's just
What does it even mean?
You know what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
Okay.
That's hilarious.
Next section. So you'll see on the outline that I have kind of these little things outlined, and that's kind of where the shadow is going to be. Now, especially when we get to the ones on the edges, the very tip of the section is going to be more highlighted. And then when it gets closer to this, and you'll see here where those shadows are, you'll know, oh, I got to put darker values there. Now again, I would like to say that we don't want this to be like a coloring book, so please use these outlines as a guide and try and do natural, smooth transitions outside of them. Also, you can see here that when I touched this new wash onto this section, the orange started to bleed. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll leave a super thin white line between the sections until things are dry, and then I'll go back and fill those white lines in. So then I'll have like edges, like sharp edges, and it won't just bleed together. Okay, so I did my initial wash, and then I'm going to start putting in darker values. Now you also want your pumpkins to match. So even though I want my left-hand side to stay pretty light, this entire section is too light compared to this section that I just painted here. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So your painting is going to inform you as you go. So if this section that I painted was really light, the same like this, then that would make sense. And there are pumpkins that are kind of ghost pumpkins that are lighter in color, so it's okay. But that's why I can't see what you're doing and you're painting, so this is where you have to take a step back and be like, well, my values on this and my coloring on this section is this, so I'm going to try and transfer and keep going with that same thing across the entire painting. Okay, and then now I'm going to introduce my red. And you might be starting off with a dark enough color that you don't have to do these many layers because your values were there on your first run. So again, you are the artist of this painting, so you get to make all the decisions. So as I'm adding these layers, if that's not something you feel is necessary to your painting, don't do it.
Yeah, it's your watermelon. You paint it how you want.
It's your watermelon. And if you really want your values to be dark, I used a little bit of brown. Now, not a lot of brown because I didn't want to, I just like bright painting, so I try not to use too much black and brown to do values. But to give that little extra depth, you grab a tiny bit of slate and you mix that with your orange. Orange and blue are complementary colors, which means when you mix them together, they cancel each other out and turn to mud. So you can mix a little bit of brown on your palette and introduce that just a tiny bit in your shadows. Now I'm going to put some red in there too, so it matches the red paint that I put down. You know what I mean? It's just about making the colors feel full and rich.
I'd like it if someone made me feel full and rich.
That's all I want.
That's really all I want.
Can we just have shirts that say, like, please make me feel full and rich? Feed me and bring me money.
That's my life goal.
That's my life goal. Okay. So I'm going to do a little bit more red because I feel like this has a nice pop of red right there, and I'm kind of missing it from here, so I'm going to introduce that.
I think that the caffeine has made me focus, but on everything rather than this specifically. Right now I'm looking at the very zoomed in of this watermelon pumpkin, and I'm thinking, pumpkin bottom jeans, because of the
apple bottom
jeans, but it just looks like a bottom from this side angle. That's all I can think of. I know I rewrote it, but
you literally just interrupted me painting to say your pumpkin looks like a butt. Okay, next section. Now you can keep on going to the left, you can start going to the right, it doesn't matter. I think I'm going to keep going to the right, because if I painted this area and then tried to paint this area, my hand would be on the wet paint. So usually I don't think that far ahead, so I'm really proud of myself right now.
Way to be.
Thank you. Way to be. Okay, here's my orange, grabbing some water, just moving that color out, leaving a thin white line in between the sections so they don't bleed together. Okay, some more orange. And we could probably, after I do this section, we can probably fast forward through all of the rest, right? And I am putting a little bit darker value near the top because it's going, You have to like think of the actual shape. And I know this sounds so silly, but it's super helpful to like, I do my hand motions. So like pumpkins start at the bottom and they go out and then they dip back in. So it's not like they do this. So because they dip back in for that stem and they kind of have that curve, you would want to darken the value right as that dip backs in to show the different planes and shape. Okay. Okay. Okay, so we did the left side of the pumpkin. I'm just going to repeat on the right side of the pumpkin, and we can fast forward this part, so zoom on. Okay, so I painted my pumpkin. Good job. And I just want to show you guys a little thing that you can do, which is really helpful. So let's say you put some paint down and it's fine, but you want to lighten it up. How do you do that? So let's say this section, this orange is all pretty even across here, and I want to lighten up an area because I don't want to go too much darker. So I would take my paintbrush and I would rinse it free of color. I would hit it off the side of my cup or my paper towel, and then I would just go to that area and lift, and then wipe, and lift, and wipe. So you can do this for lightening areas or adding texture or something like this. I will say that if the area is still wet, the paint is still wet, it's much easier to lift the color than if it's been dry a while, but it's still possible. So let's say here I want to lift up this color. I would probably wet the area first, and then take my paintbrush and lift the color. So it's possible, but I just want to show you. And this is a great little tool to know. Because a lot of people think that with watercolor, once it's down, you can't make any adjustments. And you absolutely can make adjustments. You can't totally cover it up like you can with acrylic, but that's okay. We learn, a lot of it is we learn just to be okay with the mistakes that we make. And then another bit is just the little tricks of how we can minimize the mistakes that we make, because everybody makes mistakes. Every time I paint a picture, I make a mistake somehow, but I just kind of like deal with it. I don't get mad about it, and I figure out what I can do to fix it, with it keeping in mind that the absolute worst thing that's going to happen is I would just throw this away, which then doesn't make it as scary.
I would like to add to that.
Yeah.
I think mistakes are viewed as negatively when they should be viewed as positively.
Okay.
Because you don't learn anything when you're only told that you're doing well.
True.
You don't learn as much or learn certain things. The
True.
difficult things that we learn while painting and making mistakes are more useful to our learning.
Yep. And if you want to, you ask anybody who is really good at something, how did you get really good at something? Well, I spent a lot of time making a lot of mistakes. And now because I know that, there are ways that I know to avoid them or to take the mistakes that I make and appreciate them, or, sorry, I didn't know what this was on my shoulder and I kept on like wiping it
Halloween
away.
just happened, who
And
knows
I'm like,
what it is.
What? Sorry. That was a nice moment that we had. That's okay, you guys got the gist.
Nice moment that we had.
Okay. Just kind of smoothing some things out. Okay, I do have little thin white lines in here. I'll probably paint my stem and then go back in and work on filling those in. But what I'd like to do for my white lines is actually I could do it now. This is dry enough now. Is I'll just work the white lines as if it's a highlight, or I'll work them as if they're a shadow. So whatever's easier. So this one, it was really easy just to bring that orange over into the edge of my pumpkin. It's going to be the same on this one. If you want to go back in and make those part of the shadow, you absolutely can. I just am all about doing less work than necessary. So it's a great work ethic.
That's actually what I was going to say too. When I was trying to do last month's lettering challenge, I spent a couple weeks trying to figure out how to letter with a different brush or like how to make it better, you know? And one thing I didn't realize till just now, but I learned how to become more efficient because I wanted to do a wash, and I figured out how to become more efficient with a wash before, and I was like, huh, I didn't think of that till just now. So.
Yeah.
When you practice and make mistakes, you learn faster.
You do. And I will say, now this one here, I am not going to pull this out to make this a highlight. I'm going to turn this one into a shadow, because how dark this red is here, if I were to just have this highlighted edge right here, that would look, I think, a little bit funny. It wouldn't transition smoothly, and I want it to feel like it should. So I'll just go in and make that a shadow instead. Go. Okay, now we're going to do our stem. So, and stems are brown, and browns are essentially dark orange, so there's a couple ways you can do it. You can just add black to your orange to make a dark orange, but for me, I like to mix complementary colors over adding black and brown because it gives you more of a color depth, but it is nice to have a little bit of backup in case. There are some artists who refuse to use black at all. I'm not one of those people, but I will say that sometimes mixing colors can give you a better color depth. Okay, so here's a good brown. I might add just a tiny bit more orange in there just for warmth. I like a good warm brown. Now it's okay if, because we're mixing this brown, there will be undertones of other colors, and that's actually okay, and that is more true to what you would see in nature. So if there's undertones of greens or red or oranges, that's probably pretty true to what you would see on an actual stem. Okay, so I'm going to just take my round 6, and I'm just going to kind of outline it first. Here, and it's more shadowed on the bottom, and I'm not doing a smooth wash through. I want there to be an unevenness to show that this stems have ridges too. Stems also have texture. They're not perfectly smooth all the time, and this is where mixing a little bit of black in is helpful, because here's my brown, but I want some of it to be a nice darker brown, and that's where utilizing that black comes in handy. Okay, and then I'm going to let that dry for a second. Sometimes the best thing to do is just let something dry before you keep working on it. And then the top of the stem, I did a lighter brown because I wanted to show that, like, this is kind of where it broke off. You know what I'm saying? Can you picture what I'm painting?
Yes, but I can also see what you're painting.
I just mean, like, it's clear that this is, if you were to look at it from the side, that the stem is angled because that's where it broke off of the vine. And this is kind of the opening to, like, that inside part of the vine. And you can make some changes to your stem. If you wanted to add more or a leaf or something, you're free to do that. We do have blue and orange. You might be able to get a kind of a greenish brown if you wanted to do like a dead leaf. That would work. And then I'm just going to go back and sharpen up this edge a little bit more. Okay, that was step 2. Great job. Now we're on to step 3, which is the very last step, which does take a long time. So I'll probably do one section and then we'll fast forward through the rest because you guys will get the idea. So the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that your pumpkin is dry. I just touch it. If it's wet, you will leave fingerprints though, so just be aware. And if you want, you can scoop on your tray, but I'm actually just going to dip my paintbrush in there. So I'm going to get it wet, pick up some white, and then start with my designs. And you can start on any section. Again, you guys are the artists here, so you can decide what you want to do. I will say that the white will show up better on the darker areas because they will contrast. So my white over here on this light value edge of the pumpkin will not be as visually apparent as when I'm doing it in like the shadowed areas, just so you're aware. Which I know when I say it out loud, people are like, well, duh. But sometimes when you're painting something, it just, you don't know why something is doing something over there and not there. And, you know, it's helpful for someone just to name it. And then you're like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
It's kind of trippy. The overhead shot makes the bleed-proof white bottle look empty because it's on white paper.
Really?
Yeah, it's really cool. I'll show you.
So it's kind of like a magical. It totally does look empty. That's so cool.
That's awesome.
So again, this is a thicker paste-like consistency. If you add too much water, like I want to show you what it looks like if I don't have a lot of paint and have a lot of water. It will still show up. It will just be transparent. Like, see, that's just with like mostly water on my brush and very little white. This, I have a good amount. So the balance is just trying to get enough. You just want your brush moist enough, damp enough that it makes a line, like a smooth line. But if you have too much water, you won't be able to see what you're doing. And these are little wheat things, which have a thicker base and then kind of like poke out along this side. Does that look like wheat? Sure.
Yes, it does. Also like a little bear paw.
Totally, totally.
You ever seen the movie called Brother Bear?
Uh-huh.
I used to get called Kenai by some kids that used to go to church with.
Was it a loving thing or not a loving thing?
They were much, much younger than I was, and they would just call me Kenai because I couldn't say Keenan.
Oh,
so.
that's cute.
Yeah, it was cute. They were nice.
I never know because, like, when you're a little kid, you get made fun of for nothing.
Yeah.
And so I remember getting made fun of for having blonde hair. Oh. And they would call me Goldilocks, which, like, that's not really an insult.
Not mean.
Like, but when you're a kid, you're like, that's, like, they're like, why don't you go eat some porridge, Goldilocks? And you're like, you like cry. And then now looking back, I'm like, there is nothing insulting about any of that. But it was the intent, and their intent was to hurt.
The tone they used. How dare they? That's thoroughly confusing.
That's why when I named my daughter Luna, people are like, they're going to make fun of her for that name. And I was like, well, first of all, you're not paying attention because everyone's naming their kids crazy names. Secondly, kids are going to make fun of other kids for literally anything at all.
Yep.
So You're fine. Okay. So I'm just doing different shaped leaves here. If you want to do all of them, this kind of fun design. If you want to do flowers, again, do not be afraid to play with it. I'm going to try and do a fall leaf here. If you hark back to our fall leaf project from last year, I kind of show you how to do leaves, the fall leaves shape. So maybe you try that. Maybe you don't, because it's hard. Oh, it turned out pretty good.
A bleed-proof white spider web would be pretty neat.
A spider web. That would be cool. Can you still do a spider web, even though it's past Halloween?
Yes. Can spiders still do spider webs?
You're like, spiders don't come out only on Halloween.
Yeah, that's always creepy and crawly.
I have spider webs around my house all year round.
And they're disgusting.
Whoa, my house?
No. Spider webs.
That's what it sounded like.
And the Cray family's disgusting.
And the Cray house is disgusting with their spider webs everywhere.
I hear that now.
Yeah.
I didn't hear it when I said it, but
I know. I had to clear it up.
Sorry.
Just to be clear, my house is not disgusting.
Not at all. That's awesome.
And then what I like to do is I do little dots as filler in areas, because sometimes there's not enough space to do a whole nother leaf, but it seems too empty. We'll do a little dot there. Problem solved. It's really great. And I'm painting this section by section. However, if you want this design to be like totally across where it doesn't, like, you see how I started at this section, but if you wanted this to go across multiple sections, you absolutely have the right to do that.
I was actually going to ask you that.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
This is just how I chose to do it. Also, the great thing about bleed proof white is that I wanted you guys to experience is not only can you do fun designs like this over projects, is you can use it as a highlighter for some things. So if I wanted to do a little highlight on this stem, I would just add a little bit more water to my bleed proof white, so it's not paper white, you know what I mean? Because you still want it to be brown, and put that in. So bleed proof white is just a really handy thing to have around, because it's perfect for putting highlights back into places if you forget to put them, things like that.
Quick pumpkin fun fact.
Yeah.
The dark parts on the pumpkin that you're painting with darker colors are the ribs.
Oh, the ribs, yes, yes.
And then the outside of the pumpkin is the rind/skin.
Okay.
But what if, I don't know how to describe it, but what if each bump on the pumpkin was a different theme?
Ooh, that would be cool.
That'd be sweet.
You described it really well. I
Thank
knew
you.
exactly what you were talking about.
Perfect.
Also, I would like to say that sometimes you don't get a great consistency or balance between your water and your white, and so your white isn't as pronounced as you want it to be. You can just do a second layer right on top. So let's say my leaf here, I wanted to whiten it up. I can just paint right over it and do another layer. Not a big deal. So don't be hard on yourself if you're putting it down and you're like, oh, this is so light, I don't know what to do. Just let it dry and then do another layer right on top of it, and that will make it more opaque. And I'm just going to have us speed through the rest of this pumpkin because it's just going to be me doing these little designs. So I'll see you when I'm done. Is that weird to say? Great. Okay. See you in a little bit. Okay. So that's it. That's our pumpkin. We're done with it. Good job, you guys. Just 3 steps, 1, 2, 3, and we did it. If you painted this with us, share it. I would love to see it. You can tag us on Instagram at Let's Go Make Art or hashtag Let's Make Art. We have a Facebook business page, and we also have a separate watercolor group from our business page, and that purpose is just so you guys can see what each other are painting, and a great place for you to share your work, get tips, get ideas, see how other people are approaching the project, because that's really how you learn. The more you expose yourself to different styles, different supplies, different things like that, the more you learn. So it's a win-win, and that is called Let's Make Art Watercolor. If you need any of these supplies that we used up here during this video, you can find them on our website at letsmakeart.com. And I think that's all I got to say. So good job, you guys. Bye.